Bonjour, je m'appelle Elizabeth Franklin. Je présente la Nouvelle-Orléans. New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans is a city in the United States. It is located in the state of Louisiana, which is in the lower southern part of the United States. New Orleans is well known for its vibrant culture, upbeat atmosphere, and French roots. If you look at your bottom left, you'll see a map that's been really well painted of New Orleans. And if you look to your bottom right, you'll see a map that shows New Orleans on a map of the United States. Topography of New Orleans. The natural borders of New Orleans are the Mississippi River and Lake Pontchartrain. Many parts of New Orleans elevation are under sea level. So let's look at these maps. If you look at the bottom left photo, you'll see a good picture of like the topography of the area, the landscape. You can see Lake Pontchartrain and the Mississippi River, and New Orleans is right in between the two. And then if you look at the middle map, you can see where New Orleans is between the two. And then if you look at the right one, the very third one on the bottom right, you'll see a map of the elevation. And as you can see, a lot of it is very red. And this is just one part of New Orleans, just a piece of New Orleans, but it's giving you a look at the elevation of the area, and you can see the red means it's well below sea level. So how does New Orleans topography affect its identity? The Mississippi River is probably the most important topographical factor to New Orleans' identity. The fact that New Orleans is located right alongside the Mississippi River makes it a great location for trade and transportation. The Mississippi River has greatly sculpted the city's architecture, social interactions, careers, and overall character. Another area of water that borders New Orleans is Lake Pontchartrain. New Orleans' abundance of watery areas has been a big factor in the development of its unique city culture and the way it connects to its landscape. So Louisiana. One thing I want to say is that there was no good recent linguistic map of New Orleans, so I wanted to include Louisiana and show the language of the area so you get a better picture of French in the area. So these maps show Louisiana as a whole. The first map on the bottom left shows Louisiana in general and points out where New Orleans is on it. The second map in the middle bottom shows the landscape topography of Louisiana. And the third map is a linguistic map that visualizes areas of some of the dialect used in Louisiana nowadays. From these maps, I can conclude that the dialects of Louisiana left nowadays, much of which being rooted in traditional French, exist around the areas with more abundant water sources. This makes sense because the state's French settlers wanted to settle nearby the water. So let's take a look. If you look at the bottom middle map, you'll see all of the water. And then if you go ahead and look at the bottom right map, you'll see the linguistic map of Louisiana. And so red is Cajun, orange is Cajun Creole, and yellow is Creole. That's just some of the dialect in the area. And if you go back and look at the elevation map, you can see all the water sources like Pontchartrain, Mississippi, they're all around that area. That's where more of it is in Louisiana. So let's talk about the background of of New Orleans, sorry. New Orleans was founded by France in 1718 under the name La Nouvelle-Orléans. French Canadians had been sent to Louisiana to claim the land by order of the French Navy. New Orleans switched ownership of Louisiana to Spain in the 1760s, but France regained it in the early 1800s. In 1803, the Louisiana Purchase occurred, and Louisiana became a part of the United States. French was the dominant language in New Orleans prior to the Louisiana Purchase. Let's talk about language in New Orleans now. So the dominant language in New Orleans today is English. Although French used to be the dominant language in New Orleans, after the Louisiana Purchase, English was pushed into education and adopted as Louisiana's official language. French faded from the state's lingual norms and its usage declined. Nowadays, many people worry that New Orleans is losing its ties to French. As of 2019, Louisiana educators have begun to try and incorporate dual-language French programs into their class curriculums, which I thought was pretty groovy. English may be New Orleans' official language, but the city and its people still seem to care deeply about the preservation of their French-speaking roots and its influence on their culture. Different styles of French dialect are still spoken in some parts of lower Louisiana. So some key terms and phrases. Laissez les bons temps rouler. Let the good times roll. Faubourg, that's a suburb. Fais doudou, that's a Cajun dance party. Gris-gris. Gris-gris is a kind of voodoo charm. It is usually associated with good luck or protection. Parish. A parish is a county. Lagniappe. That's a treat or a bonus of some kind. Beaucoup. Beaucoup means a lot. Parrain. Marraine. That means godfather or godmother. By my house. And though that isn't like a different language, by my house is structured similarly to French. It means at my house. And then a piqueun, it means small. This term relates to Spanish currency when Louisiana was run by Spain for a while. So what role does language play in New Orleans' identity? The many unique stylings of languages that have crossed paths with New Orleans have changed the whole of New Orleans' identity in some form or another. With English being the main language in New Orleans nowadays, the English-speaking, Americanized culture of the USA in general has become a dominant part of the city's current mainstream social habits. But one language in particular has seemed to withstand the test of time as a big part of New Orleans' individual flair. Can you guess it? That's right, you guessed it, French. So French influence in New Orleans. French has influenced modern-day New Orleans in an array of ways spanning from the structure of its common language to the atmosphere of its culture. Daily life and activity in New Orleans has been molded by its French founding. This umbrellas categories such as food, music, festivity, religion, language, and architecture. And take a look at the top left photo. That is a photo of etouffee, and that is a French name, but I love etouffee. It's delicious. You should try it if you've never had it. The French Quarter. So the French Quarter is what the original New Orleans was when France founded it. And when people think of French in New Orleans, a lot of people think, French Quarter. Louisiana has taken various actions in the past to preserve this site as a site of historical importance, because it is. Take a look at the bottom right map. That is a map of the original New Orleans, and that is the French Quarter. And then if you look at the bottom bottom left map, you can see the French Quarter in relation to New Orleans today. And it's a huge spot of tourism in the city. Mardi Gras. So let's talk about Mardi Gras. So Mardi Gras means Fat Tuesday. Mardi Gras is French, it means Fat Tuesday in English. Mardi Gras is a celebration with its mainstream cultural origins stemming from the Christian French age of New Orleans. Similar celebrations can also be linked to some early European cultures. It is based around festivities of feasting and exuberant celebration. And take a look at those photos. Looks pretty wild, right? Looks awesome. Looks wicked. And that is part of the flair. Let's talk about music in New Orleans. So my personal favorite thing about New Orleans is its rich musical culture, with a great mix of it being tied to French to its French cultural roots. Take Dr. John, for example. He was a musician in New Orleans, and a lot of his music incorporated French phrases or themes. So look at the album Gris-gris by Dr. John, and you can see a side one of the track listing on the bottom right corner. And so looking at the first track, you see Gris-gris Gumbo Yaya. That sounds New Orleans-y, and that also sounds French, Gris-gris, so that's just one example. And if you look at the top right, you'll see a house with Dr. John painted on it, and that is a house in New Orleans. Migration. New Orleans is a mixing pot of many past migrated peoples' cultures. Past migrations have come from places such as France, Spain, Haiti, Germany, and Italy. New Orleans' population in recent years has been declining. When people leave New Orleans nowadays, it seems that they either tend to only flock to other parts of Louisiana or just to other parts of the United States. So conclusion. In conclusion, New Orleans' modern character has been molded by its series of ruling successors and the vast variety of many diverse cultures that have been brought by different periods of immigration. French has been a major influence upon New Orleans' language and culture and is still a distinct and significant part of the city. Laissez les bons temps brûler. The end. Au revoir.